When my parents said they wanted family bonding, they meant it. My parents forced me and my three brothers to hold hands our entire lives because they believed physical separation would make us grow apart emotionally. And when I turned 15, they started looking for a surgeon who would permanently connect us. It started when I was 7, and my youngest brother Micah was 3. We'd spent the whole day bickering with each other, so the next morning, Mom lined us up in the hallway and grabbed my wrist. "From now on, you hold on tight," she said, pressing my palm into Noah's. "Families that touch, stay together." She moved down the line, forcibly joining each brother's hand to the next. Walking to school became a nightmare performance. 4 boys stumbling down the sidewalk in a human chain, trying to match pace. Noah walked too fast, Micah's legs were too short, and I was stuck in the middle getting yanked both directions. "Move together," Mom would shout from behind us. "Like a family should." Cars slowed down to stare. Kids from school took pictures. Going to the bathroom meant standing outside the door in a line while one person used the toilet, our connected hands snaking under the door gap. "Can you hurry up?" Noah would hiss while I tried to use the restroom with 3 hands pulling at me through the crack. Teachers didn't know what to do when 4 kids showed up to class linked together. We had to sit in special arranged desks, and I learned to write with my left hand because my right was always gripping Noah's sweaty palm. By the time I was 10, Mom decided holding hands wasn't enough. She pulled out her sewing machine one Sunday and started modifying our clothes. "This will make everything easier," she hummed, stitching our 4 shirts together at the shoulders and sides. The fabric pulled tight across our backs, forcing us to stand in a perfect line. When Caleb tried to turn his head too far, the collar started choking Micah. "I can't breathe right," Micah whimpered that first night in our connected pajamas. We lay in the bed Dad had made by pushing 4 twins together, unable to roll over without dragging everyone with us. "You're breathing fine," Dad said from the doorway. "Stop being dramatic." The panic attack started when I was 12. The feeling of always being touched, pulled, connected, it made my chest tight and my vision blur. During one attack, I clawed at the fabric connecting us until my fingers bled. Mom found me sobbing and hyperventilating, still attached to my confused brothers. "This is just your selfish individualism trying to break through," she said, holding my face in her hands. "We'll fix that." When I was 13, Micah finally snapped. I woke up to the sound of scissors cutting fabric. In the darkness, I could see him sawing through the material at his shoulder. "Micah, no," I whispered, but he kept cutting. When the last thread broke, he rolled away from us and lay spread eagle on his own bed section, laughing and crying at the same time. That's when Mom brought out the chains. Real metal chains from the hardware store, with padlocks she wore the keys to on a necklace. The metal was cold and heavy on our wrists. Within a week, the skin underneath turned raw and started weeping clear fluid. The chains clanked when we walked, announcing our approach like medieval prisoners. I found her laptop open one afternoon while she was in the shower. My brothers were napping, so I had just enough slack to reach the keyboard. Her email was full of messages to doctors around the world. Most were rejections. "This is child abuse. Please seek psychiatric help. I'm reporting this to authorities." But one doctor in the Philippines had responded differently. He'd attached diagrams showing how skin grafts could connect 4 children, how tissue expanders would slowly stretch our flesh until we could be joined. "What you reading?" Mom's voice made me jump. She stood in the doorway, towel around her hair, smile spreading across her face. "Oh, good. You found it. I wanted it to be a surprise, but maybe it's better, you know." She sat down next to me, our chains rattling. "Dr. Santos says he can start the procedures next month. Isn't that wonderful?" That night at dinner, she made the announcement officially. Dad pulled out printed diagrams showing 4 boys fused together at the sides like paper dolls made of flesh. "You'll share skin, blood vessels, maybe eventually organs," he explained, tracing the connection points with his finger. "True unity, the first family to achieve it." "I don't want to be connected," Micah screamed, trying to stand but getting yanked back down by the chains. "Want has nothing to do with it," Mom said calmly. "This is about need, and you need each other more than you know." I stared at those diagrams while my brothers cried. In a month, we'd be on a plane to the Philippines. In 2 months, we'd start being surgically joined. By next year, we wouldn't be 4 boys anymore. We'd be one twisted organism, a medical experiment that would probably die from infection or organ failure. I lie awake that whole night with my brothers breathing around me, the chains connecting our wrists cold against my skin, and I make a decision that scares me so bad I can barely think straight. The surgery isn't going to happen because I'm going to stop it, even if I don't know how yet. My heart pounds so hard I'm afraid it'll wake everyone up, but I keep my breathing steady and start planning. Noah shifts next to me, and the chain pulls at my wrist, making the raw skin sting. I count his breaths until they go slow and even again. Micah whimpers in his sleep on my other side, probably having a nightmare about the diagrams Mom showed us. I stare at the ceiling and try to think of anyone who might help us. Teachers see us at the school every day. They have to notice something's wrong. The chains clank softly when I move my hand to scratch my nose and I freeze, waiting to see if anyone wakes up. Nobody does. I spend the rest of the night going over everything I know about our situation, trying to figure out what adults are supposed to do when kids need help. By the time gray light starts showing through the window, I've decided I have to tell someone at the school, someone who's required to report stuff like this. The next morning during breakfast, I watch my brothers carefully to see who might help me. Micah whispers that he's scared and begs me with his eyes to do something, while Noah sits up straighter and says the surgery will make us closer like Mom wants. Judah won't look at anyone and just pushes his food around his plate, refusing to take a side. Mom hums while she pours orange juice, acting like everything's normal, like we're not chained together at the kitchen table. Dad reads the newspaper and doesn't look up when Micah's hand shakes so bad he spills his cereal. I kick Micah's foot under the table, trying to tell him to stay calm, to not let them see how scared he is. Noah shoots me an angry look and pulls his chain tight, making all our wrists jerk. Mom notices and smiles at Noah like he did something good. I start paying attention to details I used to ignore, like how Mom's necklace with the padlock keys sits against her chest and never comes off even when she sleeps. The chains are standard hardware store locks, nothing fancy, which means they could be cut or picked if I could get the right tools. Every small observation feels like a tiny piece of power I'm gathering. I notice Dad keeps the car keys on a hook by the garage door. I notice the house phone sits on the kitchen counter where I could reach it if I had enough chain slack. I notice Mom checks her email every morning at 9 while she drinks coffee. I start making a mental list of everything that might matter later. The brand name on the padlocks. The fact that our bedroom window faces the street. The times when Mom and Dad are both busy and not watching us as closely. At the school that day, I decide the safest person to tell is a teacher or counselor who has to report this kind of thing to authorities. My hands shake during third period as I think about actually saying the words out loud to someone. I pick Porter, the school counselor, because he helped a kid in my grade last year when things were bad at home. I saw that kid talking to Porter in the hallway, and a week later the kid wasn't living with his dad anymore. Porter has an office near the main entrance with his name on the door. I've never been inside, but I've walked past it 100 times. During lunch, I sneak into the bathroom and use a pencil I stole from art class to write a tiny note on torn notebook paper. The note says my parents are planning surgery to attach me and my brothers together for good. We're chained at home. Please help, with my name and grade. I fold it small enough to hide in my palm. My hands won't stop shaking and the pencil keeps slipping. I have to rewrite it twice because the first version is too messy to read. The bathroom door opens and I shove the note in my pocket, pretending to wash my hands. Some kid from my English class walks in and doesn't even look at me. When he goes into a stall, I take the note back out and fold it again, making it as small as possible. It fits in the center of my palm if I curl my fingers around it. But when I get home that afternoon, Mom and Dad are waiting with big news that makes my stomach drop. They're pulling all 4 of us out of school to homeschool us, starting right away, because they don't trust the outside world's influence anymore. The withdrawal paperwork is already filled out, and we're going to the school office tomorrow to make it official. Mom has the forms spread out on the dining room table, our names already written in her neat handwriting. Dad explains how we'll do lessons together at home, how it'll bring us closer as a family. My throat closes up, and I can't breathe right. Tomorrow is my last chance. If I don't get that note to Porter tomorrow, we'll never go back to the school. We'll be trapped here until they put us on that plane to the Philippines. I realize tomorrow's school visit is my last chance, so I keep the note hidden in my sock all night. At the office, while Mom talks to the secretary about withdrawal forms, I pretend to tie my shoe and slip the note onto Porter's desk when I see him walk past. He spots it, reads it quick, and his face goes completely still before he gives me the smallest nod. The whole thing takes maybe 5 seconds. Mom is still talking to the secretary about which forms she needs to sign. Dad is looking at a bulletin board covered in the school event flyers. Porter walks away like nothing happened, but I see him fold the note and put it in his shirt pocket. My heart is beating, so loud I'm sure everyone can hear it. Porter doesn't make a scene or confront my parents right there, which I'm grateful for because I'm scared they'll see. Instead, he asks the secretary if he can look at the chains on our wrists for his records, saying it's standard procedure for withdrawn students. Mom's smile gets tight, but she can't refuse without looking suspicious, and he takes careful notes about the raw skin and metal links. He asks when we were first chained and Mom lies, saying just last week. Porter writes that down, but his eyes meet mine for a second, and I know he doesn't believe her. He measures the width of the chains with a ruler from the secretary's desk. He takes a picture with his phone, saying it's for the withdrawal file. Mom's jaw clenches, but she lets him do it. Within an hour of us leaving the school, Porter files a report with Child Protective Services and requests they do a same-day check. I don't know this is happening yet, but Mom and Dad must sense something because they cut our errands short and rush us home. At dinner, Dad announces we're not going anywhere extra anymore, and Mom moves the key necklace inside her shirt, where it's harder to see. She keeps touching her collar like she's checking to make sure the keys are still there. Dad locks the front door and the back door and checks all the windows. Nobody says anything about why. We all just eat our spaghetti in silence, the chains clinking against the table edge every time someone reaches for their water glass. That night, Dad installs an extra lock on the outside of our bedroom door, saying it's for our safety. The message is clear. They know someone might be watching now, and they're making their control tighter before anyone can step in. I lie there listing every detail I can remember. Dates we were first chained, how the sewn clothes made it hard to breathe, the times Micah cried himself sick. October 15th was the first day of the chains, 3 months ago. The sewn shirts came before that, when I was 10, which means we wore them for almost 3 years. Micah threw up twice from crying so hard, once in November and once last week when Mom showed us the surgery diagrams. I go through everything in my head like I'm studying for a test, because I might need to tell all this to police or social workers if Porter's report actually does something. I keep going through everything in my head, making myself remember each detail like I'm studying for the most important test of my life. The chains first appeared on October 15th. I'm sure of that, because it was 3 days after my 13th birthday, and Mom said it was my birthday gift to the family. Dad bought them at the hardware store on Franklin Street, the one with the orange sign, and he made us watch while he measured our wrists and picked the right size links. The bruises from those first days were dark purple, almost black, and they spread up our forearms before fading to that sick yellow-green color. Now we have new bruises forming right on top of where the old ones were, layers of damage that never fully heal. I memorize which brother is chained on which side, how many links connect us, the exact sound the metal makes when it drags across the floor. When everyone's breathing gets deep and steady, I start testing how far I can move before the chains pull tight. I shift my weight slowly, sliding my body toward the edge of the bed while my brothers sleep. The chain allows maybe 4 feet of slack before it starts tugging on Noah's wrist, and he stirs in his sleep. I try reaching for the bedroom door, but I'm at least 6 feet short, and the window is even farther. The sewn shirts have less give than I thought, only about 6 inches before the fabric starts pulling tight across someone's chest or throat. I twist carefully to see if I can reach the light switch, and the collar immediately starts choking Micah, making him cough in his sleep. Every small movement creates a reaction somewhere along our connected line, and I realize we're designed to be completely dependent on group cooperation for even basic movement. Noah's eyes snap open and he hisses at me to stop moving around. He says I'm going to wake everyone up and get us all in trouble, and his voice has that edge that means he's really scared. Micah starts whimpering that his wrist hurts where the metal has rubbed the skin raw, and I can hear him trying not to cry out loud. The bedroom door opens, and Dad stands there in his pajamas, asking what all the noise is about. I take the blame immediately, saying I had a bad dream and was moving around, that the others were just reacting to me. Dad walks over and examines the chains, then goes to his toolbox in the hallway. He comes back with another section of chain and adds an extra loop to mine, connecting it with a new padlock, so now I'm carrying more weight than my brothers. The metal is cold and heavy, pulling my arm down, and I don't argue or complain because I know that's what he wants. I need them to think I'm broken and compliant, not planning and documenting everything. After Dad leaves, Noah turns his back to me, and Micah keeps sniffling quietly, and I lie there feeling the extra chain weight while I add this punishment to my mental list of things to report. When morning comes, Mom walks into our room carrying the rolled-up surgery diagrams that Dad printed. She has tape in her other hand and a smile on her face that makes my stomach hurt. She unrolls the papers and starts taping them to our bedroom wall right above where we sleep, positioning them so we can't avoid seeing them. The diagrams show 4 boys connected at their sides and shoulders, with lines indicating where skin grafts would attach us and how blood vessels would be shared between our bodies. There are labels in English and another language that I think is Tagalog, pointing to connection points and surgical procedures. Mom sits on the edge of the bed and makes us look at the diagrams while she explains how the surgery will work. She traces her finger along the connection lines and talks about how we'll share blood flow, how our bodies will learn to work as one system, how we'll never be separated again. She sounds excited, like she's describing a vacation or a fun project, not a medical experiment that could kill us. The drawings show tissue expanders that will stretch our skin for months before the actual grafting, and Mom explains we'll need to wear these devices under our clothes to prepare our bodies. My stomach turns, looking at the mechanical drawings of flesh being pulled and connected, and I have to swallow hard to keep from throwing up. Judah stares at the wall with blank eyes, and Micah starts crying again, but Mom just keeps talking about how beautiful it will be when we're finally truly united. 2 days go by with those diagrams staring at us from the wall, and then the phone rings during breakfast. Mom answers, and her whole voice changes, going sweet and cooperative in a way that sets off alarms in my head. She's talking to someone named Ayana Medina, who says she's a social worker, and Mom agrees to a home visit on Thursday afternoon, like it's no problem at all. The second Mom hangs up, her face goes hard, and she looks at Dad with this expression that makes me cold inside. They send us to our room, and we can hear them talking in the kitchen, planning something. When they call us back out, Dad sits us down at the table and explains that some people don't understand our family's closeness, that we need to help these visitors see how happy we are. Mom adds that if we say the wrong things, if we make our family look bad, there will be serious consequences. They spend the rest of the day coaching us on what to say, and I realize they're going to make us lie to cover up everything they've done. Thursday morning arrives, and Dad unlocks our chains for the first time in 3 months. My wrist feels weird and light without the metal weight, and there are deep red grooves where the chains sat. He puts us back in the sewn-together shirts instead, the ones that look less obviously like abuse to someone who doesn't know what to look for. Mom drills us on our answers for 2 solid hours, asking practice questions about school and family time and whether we're happy. She wants us to say the hand-holding is our choice, that we love being close, that we're a normal family who just values togetherness. Micah messes up an answer, saying he misses playing alone sometimes, and Mom makes him skip lunch as punishment. The rest of us watch him sit at the table with an empty plate while we eat, and the message is clear about what happens if we don't perform correctly. By the time the doorbell rings at 2 p.m., we've been trained like dogs to give the right responses, and I feel sick, knowing I'm going to have to lie when this might be our only chance for help. Ayana turns out to be a black woman with kind eyes and a clipboard, and Porter is with her, which makes me feel a little better. Our house looks almost normal except for the connected shirts, which Mom explains as a family bonding exercise we all enjoy. Ayana asks if she can speak to each of us separately, and I see hope flicker for just a second before Mom shuts it down. She says we're comfortable talking as a group, that we don't like being separated, and I watch Ayana write something on her clipboard about that refusal. Mom keeps her hand on my shoulder the whole time, her fingers tight enough to hurt, and I know what will happen if I say anything wrong. Porter's eyes meet mine, and I try to communicate everything with just a look, but I don't know if he understands. The visit feels like it's slipping away before it even really starts, and I'm trapped between the truth I need to tell and the fear of what my parents will do if I speak up. Ayana asks to see our wrists, and Mom can't refuse without looking suspicious, so she reluctantly lets us show the social worker our arms. The bruises haven't fully faded. There are still yellow and green marks where the chains sat for months, and new red grooves from this morning. Ayana takes pictures with her phone, lots of them, zooming in on the worst spots. She asks Micah gentle questions about school and playing with friends, and he gives the scripted answers in this tiny voice that doesn't sound like him at all. He says we're happy, that we like being together, that Mom and Dad take good care of us. I want to scream that he's lying, that we're being forced to say these things, but Mom's hand is still on my shoulder, and I can't make the words come out. Ayana takes more notes and asks a few more questions, but eventually she thanks us for our time and heads for the door. Porter gives me one last look before he leaves, and I try to put everything I'm feeling into my eyes, but then they're gone. The door closes, and nothing has changed. We're still here, still trapped, and the surgery is still going to happen. I feel crushed, like something inside me just broke, because I thought this visit would save us, and instead, we just performed our way through it like trained animals. That evening, while Dad is in the shower, I'm helping Mom clean up the kitchen, and I spot something in the junk drawer. There's an old cell phone buried under twist ties and rubber bands, one of those cheap prepaid phones from years ago. I can see a tiny bit of battery life left on the screen. My heart starts racing and I grab a dish towel to hide what I'm doing, slipping the phone into my waistband under the connected shirt. The fabric is tight enough that the phone stays put, pressing against my skin. When Mom tells us to go brush our teeth, I tell my brothers I need to use the bathroom first, and they have to wait outside like always. I have maybe 2 minutes alone before they'll start complaining. My hands shake so badly, I almost drop the phone twice while I'm trying to plug it into the charger behind the toilet where no one will see it. The cord barely reaches, and I have to wedge it behind the pipes, but it starts charging with a tiny red light. I flush the toilet and wash my hands and come out trying to look normal, even though my heart is beating, so hard I'm sure everyone can hear it. Late that night, when everyone is finally asleep, I carefully unplug the phone and bring it back to our room. The screen light seems bright as the sun in the darkness, and I keep checking to make sure my brothers don't wake up. I take pictures of our chained wrists, the sewn clothing, the surgery diagram still taped to our wall. The phone's camera is terrible and the lighting is awful, but the images clearly show what's happening to us. You can see the metal links, the raw skin, the medical drawings of boys being grafted together. I find the school website on the phone's browser and locate Porter's email address. My hands are shaking, so much I have to type the message 3 times before I get it right. I write proof in the subject line and attach all the photos, then hit send just as the battery dies. The phone goes dark in my hands and I hide it back in my waistband, my heart pounding so loud I'm afraid it will wake everyone. I don't know if the email actually sent, if Porter will see it, if the pictures are clear enough to matter. But it's something. It's evidence. And maybe this time someone will actually do something to stop what's coming. The next morning, Mom tells me to take out the trash before breakfast, and I drag my brothers outside with me because of the chains connecting our wrists. The recycling bin is overflowing, and I'm pulling out flattened boxes to make room when I see a printed email buried under the cardboard. It's a flight confirmation from Philippine Airlines showing our departure date as February 3rd, which is 2 weeks from now, not next month like they told us at dinner. My hands start shaking as I read the passenger names, all 4 of us listed with seat assignments, and I realize they moved everything up, probably because Ayana came to the house. My chest gets tight like someone's sitting on it, and I can't pull in enough air, and the edges of my vision start going dark and fuzzy. I drop the email and bend over with my hands on my knees, gasping and making these weird choking sounds I can't control. Micah starts crying because I'm scaring him, and Noah yanks on the chain telling me to stop being dramatic, but I literally cannot breathe right, and my whole body is shaking. The panic attack hits full force, and I end up on my knees in the grass next to the garbage cans, sobbing and hyperventilating so badly that spit is dripping from my mouth. I hear a voice calling from the fence and look up to see Mrs. Schaefer from next door, leaning over with concern on her face, asking if I'm okay and should she call someone. I want to scream for help, want to tell her everything about the chains and the surgery and the flight in 2 weeks, but my brothers are right there attached to me, and I can't get words out past the gasping. The front door bangs open and Dad comes outside in his slippers, moving fast across the yard toward us. He puts his hand on my shoulder with a grip that's gentle on the outside, but his fingers dig in hard enough to hurt, and he calls over to Mrs. Schaefer in this calm, friendly voice that everything's fine. Dad tells her I have asthma and forgot my inhaler this morning, that he's got it under control and thanks for checking. Mrs. Schaefer looks uncertain, her eyes moving from my tear-stained face to the chains on our wrists, to Dad's tight smile, and she asks if she should call 911 anyway. Dad laughs like that's ridiculous and says, "No need. We're actually heading to see our doctor this afternoon about adjusting my medication." He keeps his hand clamped on my shoulder the whole time, steering me and my brothers back toward the house while waving at Mrs. Schaefer with his other hand. At the front door, Dad pauses and turns back to Mrs. Schaefer, who's still watching from her fence. He explains in this smooth, reasonable voice that I'm under a lot of stress from the school changes, that we recently decided to homeschool, and the transition has been hard on me. He mentions we're working with doctors and therapists to help me adjust, making it sound like they're responsible, concerned parents dealing with a difficult kid. Mrs. Schaefer nods slowly and says she understands, that her nephew had similar issues with anxiety, and she hopes I feel better soon. I watch her walk back across her yard to her house without calling anyone or asking more questions, and something inside me just breaks. I realize then how good my parents are at seeming normal to outsiders, how easily they can explain away anything suspicious with the right tone and words. They've probably been practicing these explanations, preparing for the moment when someone notices something wrong. Inside the house, Dad's friendly mask drops immediately, and he shoves us toward the bedroom, telling us to stay there until he says we can come out. Mom appears in the hallway with her arms crossed, asking what happened, and Dad explains about the email in the recycling. Her face goes pale and then red, and she starts yelling about how I'm deliberately trying to sabotage the family, how I'm poisoning my brothers against them. That night at dinner, nobody talks, and the tension is so thick I can barely swallow my food, and I keep thinking about those plane tickets and how little time I have left. The next day, we're at the grocery store because Mom needs ingredients for some recipe, and we're shuffling through the parking lot in our connected line when I make a decision. I wait until we're near the store entrance where there are lots of people around, and then I just let my knees buckle and drop hard onto the asphalt. The fall yanks my brothers down with me because of the chains, and I make sure to hit the ground with enough force that my head smacks the pavement. Pain explodes across my skull, and I see actual stars and blood starts running from somewhere above my eyebrow. People are suddenly surrounding us. voices overlapping as they ask if we're okay and someone needs to call for help. Mom is trying to pull us up and saying we're fine, just tripped, but there's blood all over my face now, and a woman in scrubs is already on her phone with 911. I stay limp and dazed, not having to fake much because my head is genuinely pounding, and within minutes, I hear sirens approaching. The paramedics arrive and insist on taking me to the emergency room, despite Mom's protests that it's just a small cut and we can handle it at home. Dad shows up from inside the store and tries to refuse treatment, but the lead paramedic points out that I'm a minor with a head injury and they're legally required to transport me. They load me onto a stretcher, and here's the thing that makes my heart race with something like hope. They can't fit my brothers in the ambulance with the chains connecting us. Dad has to use the key from Mom's necklace to unlock my wrist, and for the first time in months, the metal falls away and my arm is free. The absence of their weight on the chain feels wrong and right at the same time. Like a phantom limb I can still feel pulling, even though nothing's there. In the ambulance, I'm alone with just the paramedic checking my vital signs, and the space around me feels huge and empty and terrifying. My wrist, where the chain was, looks pale and raw with a ring of scabbed skin, and the paramedic notices it immediately, but doesn't say anything yet, just makes notes on her clipboard. At the hospital, they take me back to an exam room, and a doctor comes in who introduces herself as Deepika Zhang. She's Indian with dark hair pulled back tight and sharp eyes that take in everything about me in seconds. She examines the cut on my head first, cleaning away the blood and determining I need 3 stitches, but then her attention shifts to my wrists. She asks direct questions about how I got the abrasions and bruising, and her voice is gentle but firm, like she already knows I'm going to lie, and she's not going to accept it. I start with the story my parents coached us on about it being a family bonding exercise, but she just waits quietly until the words dry up in my throat. Then I tell her everything in a shaking voice that keeps breaking, about the years of forced hand-holding, and the sewn clothes and the chains with padlocks, and the surgery they're planning in 2 weeks. A nurse comes in with a camera and takes photographs of my wrists from multiple angles, and she measures the width of the abrasions and documents the depth of the bruising with a ruler. Zhang's face stays calm and professional the whole time, but I see her jaw tighten and her hands clench briefly before she relaxes them. She tells me she's required by law to report this to Child Protective Services, and she's also documenting everything in my medical record, so there's an official trail. I ask if that means I don't have to go home, and she pauses, then explains that CPS will investigate, but she can't keep me here against my parents' wishes unless I'm in immediate physical danger. The words hit me like a punch, because I am in immediate danger. The flight is in 2 weeks, but apparently that's not immediate enough. My parents show up about an hour later, and there's this tense conversation with Zhang, where she strongly recommends I stay for observation overnight. Mom and Dad are polite but firm, saying they'll monitor me at home and bring me back if there are any problems. Zhang pulls out papers for them to sign, acknowledging they're taking me home against medical advice, and I can see how much she hates doing this, but legally, she can't stop them. The ride home is silent and terrible, with Mom driving and Dad turned around in the front seat staring at me the whole time. When we get to the house, Dad takes away my shoes and socks, every single pair, and tells me I'm not going anywhere without permission. Mom's hands shake with anger as she makes dinner, slamming pots and pans against the stove so hard, I'm surprised nothing breaks. We eat in complete silence except for the scraping of forks on plates, and nobody finishes their food because we're all too tense to swallow. That night, I lie awake listening to Dad install something on our bedroom door, the sound of a drill whining and screws biting into wood. In the morning, I see he's added 2 more locks on the outside that we can't reach from inside the room. The next morning, I wake up to hear Mom on the phone in the kitchen, her voice tight and fake pleasant. I can't make out all the words, but I hear her say Ayana's name and something about scheduling, and when she hangs up, she immediately calls Dad at work. Through the bedroom door, I hear her tell him that Zhang's report has opened a formal investigation, and Ayana is coordinating with a police officer for an unannounced welfare check. I don't know the details yet, but I can tell something's shifted in the house because Mom keeps checking her phone every few minutes, and Dad comes home early from work. He paces by the windows looking out at the street, and Mom follows him around asking what they should do and whether they should move up the flight even more. They're scared now in a way I haven't seen before, and that almost makes me more frightened, because scared people do desperate things. Dad starts going through the house, removing anything that could be used as evidence, taking down the surgery diagrams from our bedroom wall and shredding papers in his office. Mom practices her explanations in the mirror, rehearsing how to describe our situation in a way that sounds eccentric, but not abusive. I watch them prepare their defenses and realize they've thought through every possible scenario, every question someone might ask, every angle they need to cover. That afternoon, Dad comes into our room and starts searching through our stuff, pulling out drawers and checking under mattresses. He finds the dead cell phone wedged behind my pillow where I hid it after the battery died, and he holds it up with this look of triumph mixed with rage. He asks what I used it for, and there's no point in lying anymore, so I tell him the truth, that I sent pictures to Porter days ago showing the chains and the diagrams. Dad's face goes bright red, and a vein pulses in his forehead, and for a second I think he's going to hit me, but then he starts laughing. He says it doesn't matter. The evidence is already out there with people who are required to act on it, and there's nothing I can do now to take it back. His laugh sounds wrong, too high and strained, and he tells me I've just made everything harder for myself. He takes the phone and smashes it against the wall, plastic and glass exploding across the floor, and then he sweeps the pieces into the trash. Mom comes in to see what the noise was, and Dad tells her about the pictures, and she just nods slowly, like she expected this. She tells me I've forced their hand, that they were trying to do this the right way, but now they have to protect the family by any means necessary. I don't know what that means exactly, but the way she says it makes my skin go cold. 2 days later, Mom announces we need to go to the school office to pick up our withdrawn student records, and I know this is probably my last chance to do something. The whole drive there, I'm thinking about how to get to a computer or a phone, some way to send more evidence or contact someone who can help. At the school, Mom talks to the secretary about the paperwork we need, and I notice there's a computer on the desk near the printer that's logged in and unlocked. I tell Mom I need to use the bathroom and she says fine, but make it quick, and instead, I slip over to the computer while she's distracted. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely type, but I pull up email and find Dr. Santos's address from the correspondence Mom showed us. I write a message asking if he knows our parents are forcing this surgery without our consent, that we're minors who don't want this procedure, and we're being held against our will. I explain about the chains and the abuse, and beg him to refuse to do the surgery, and I hit send, just as Mom turns around from the secretary's desk. She doesn't see what I did, because I close the browser and move away from the computer fast, but my heart is pounding so hard I'm sure she can hear it. While the printer runs our records, I'm standing near the output tray when I notice a document Dad left behind from an earlier visit. It's a consent form for the surgery with signatures at the bottom that are supposed to be from me and my brothers, but I know we never signed anything. I look closer and realize the signatures are forged, written in handwriting that's similar to ours, but not quite right. Dad must have practiced copying our writing styles, and the forgery is good enough that it might fool someone who doesn't know us. I glance around to make sure no one's watching and pull out my phone to take a picture, but then I remember Dad smashed my phone, and I don't have it anymore. The school computer has a scan-to-email function, though, so I grab the form and feed it through the scanner, sending it to Porter's email address with a note explaining these signatures are fake. The evidence of forgery might be enough to stop the surgery, even if everything else fails, proof that they're willing to break laws to make this happen. I slip the original form back into the output tray and step away, just as Mom collects our records from the secretary. On the drive home, she's humming to herself like everything's fine, but I can see her checking the rearview mirror constantly, and her knuckles are white on the steering wheel. Something's coming, and we both know it. Some confrontation or intervention that will decide everything, and I've done all I can to make sure the right people have the information they need to stop this. That night, I hear Dad in the hallway and peek through the crack in our bedroom door to see him pulling a metal lockbox from the closet shelf. He opens it on the kitchen table, and I watch him count our passports, flipping through each blue booklet and checking the expiration dates. Mom stands next to him sorting through a thick stack of cash, hundreds and fifties mostly, rubber banding them into bundles that she stuffs into a black duffel bag. They're talking in low voices about flight times and layovers and how long the drive to the airport takes. Dad goes to the garage and comes back with his toolbox, then starts installing metal bars across our bedroom windows, drilling holes into the frame and screwing the brackets tight. The drill is loud and makes Micah cover his ears, the chains rattling as he moves his hands up. When Dad finishes the windows, he moves to the front door and adds 2 extra deadbolts, the kind that need keys from both sides. I realize our house is turning into a cage, every exit getting blocked or reinforced, and the walls feel like they're pressing in closer. Mom walks past our room carrying suitcases from the attic, and I hear her in their bedroom packing clothes and toiletries. The activity in the house has a frantic energy, like they're racing against something they can see coming. Around 8 that evening, there's a sharp knock at the front door that makes everyone freeze. Dad looks through the peephole and his face goes tight before he turns to Mom and mouths something I can't hear. They both move fast, grabbing the chains off the coffee table where we'd been sitting and shoving them under the couch cushions. We're still in the sewn-together shirts, though, the fabric connecting us at the shoulders, and there's no time to change. Dad opens the door, and Ayana is standing there with a tall white guy in a police uniform who has a serious face and dark eyes that take in everything. Ayana introduces him as Officer Curtis and says they're doing an evening welfare check, just following up on some concerns that were reported. Dad's voice goes smooth and friendly, inviting them in and saying, "Of course, we have nothing to hide." Officer Curtis walks into the living room, and his eyes go straight to us, sitting in a line on the couch, our shirts stitched together, and he asks if he can see our wrists. Mom starts to say that's not necessary, but Curtis just waits, his hand resting on his belt, and finally Dad nods at us. We hold out our arms, and Curtis kneels down, examining the raw red rings where the chains sat for months, the scabs, and the shiny new skin underneath. He takes out his phone and snaps photos without asking permission, getting close-ups of each wrist. Ayana is writing notes on a clipboard and asking questions about our daily routine, why we're in connected clothing, whether we have regular access to the school and friends. Dad explains it's an educational philosophy about family unity, that we're homeschooled now, that the wrist marks are from a craft project that got out of hand. His lies sound almost believable, and I hate how good he is at this. The visit only lasts about 15 minutes before Ayana says they have what they need for now, and they'll be in touch. Officer Curtis gives Dad a long look before following Ayana out, and I watch through the window as they walk to their cars in the driveway. Ayana pulls out her phone and makes a call, pacing back and forth under the streetlight, and I press my ear against the window glass trying to hear. Her voice is muffled, but I catch phrases like photos from the ER and documented evidence and petition for travel restriction. She's talking to someone official sounding, maybe a supervisor or a lawyer, and she keeps looking back at our house while she talks. Hope flickers in my chest for the first time in days, this tiny feeling that maybe someone with actual power is going to stop this. Curtis gets in his patrol car but doesn't start it, just sits there watching our house, and I wonder if he's waiting to see what we do next. After about 10 minutes, both vehicles pull away, and the street goes quiet again. Dad locks the door with all 3 deadbolts and turns to look at us with this expression I can't read. Mom's hands are shaking as she pulls the chains back out from under the couch cushions and locks them onto our wrists again, the metal cold and familiar. Nobody says anything about the visit, but the energy in the house has changed, gotten more desperate and tense. I lie in bed that night listening to my parents argue in whispers in their room, catching words like subpoena and custody, and before they can. The next afternoon, Mom's phone buzzes on the kitchen counter while she's making lunch. She picks it up and puts it on speaker by accident, and a woman's voice comes through saying, "This is a courtesy call from the county courthouse about a petition hearing scheduled for next week regarding a temporary travel hold pending investigation." The message goes on about case numbers and courtroom locations before Mom frantically hits the button to stop it. Dad's face goes completely white and then hard, like something inside him just locked into place. He tells Mom to start packing right now. We're leaving tonight, before any official paperwork can be served to them in person. Mom drops the sandwich she was making and runs to the bedroom, pulling suitcases out again and throwing clothes in without folding them. By 10 that night, we're in the van driving down dark highways toward the airport 2 hours away. I'm pressed against the window in the back row watching streetlights blur past and trying to memorize the route, the exit numbers and road signs. My brothers are quiet next to me, Noah staring straight ahead and Micah's head drooping with exhaustion. Judah has his eyes closed, but I can tell he's not sleeping from how tense his shoulders are. I keep thinking about which gas stations might have security cameras or which rest stops might have people awake who could help. The chains connect all 4 of us in a line across the bench seat, and every time the van turns, we all sway together. Mom keeps checking the GPS and telling Dad which lane to be in, her voice tight and anxious. The highway is mostly empty this late, and our headlights cut through the darkness, showing nothing but road and trees. I count the mile markers and watch for anything that might be useful later, police stations or hospitals or anywhere with lights on. My heart is pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat, but I force myself to stay calm and observe everything. Dad pulls off at a 24-hour gas station about halfway there, one of those bright fluorescent places that look stark against the night. He gets out to pump gas, and Mom takes Micah to the bathroom, unlocking his chain from ours temporarily. While they're gone, I reach forward and tear a piece of paper from the van's manual in the glove box, my hands shaking so bad I almost rip it wrong. I find a pen in the cup holder and write in tiny letters, "Flight to Philippines tonight, 4 boys being taken against will, call police." And I add what I remember of our flight number from hearing Mom talk about it. Noah sees what I'm doing and grabs my arm, but I twist away from him. When Mom comes back with Micah, I tell her I need to use the bathroom too, and she sighs, but unlocks my chain. Inside the gas station, the lights are harsh, and the cashier is a tired-looking woman with gray hair reading a magazine. I walk up to the counter and pretend to look at candy bars, then slide the folded paper across to her when she glances up. She looks confused and starts to unfold it, but I shake my head and mouth, "Please," before walking back out. I don't know if she'll actually call anyone, or if she'll just throw it away, but it's the only chance I have. 20 minutes later, I see red and blue lights flashing in the side mirror, and my stomach drops. Officer Curtis is pulling us over, his patrol car right behind us. Dad slows down and pulls onto the shoulder, his jaw clenched tight. Curtis walks up to the driver window with a flashlight and asks where we're headed this late. Dad's voice goes calm and friendly again, explaining we're just taking a late trip to visit family. It's kind of last minute, but we got a good deal on flights. He pulls out our passports and the printed tickets to show Curtis, everything looking official and legitimate. Curtis asks to speak to us kids and walks around to the back door, opening it and shining his light on our faces. He asks if we're okay and if we want to go on this trip, and we all nod because our parents are right there listening, and we're too scared to say anything different. Curtis looks at our wrists, where the chains are back on, and his face gets hard, but he doesn't have grounds to stop us, apparently. He tells Dad to drive safe and be careful with kids this late at night, then lets us go with just a warning. As we pull back onto the highway, I want to scream or cry, but I just sit there frozen, watching Curtis's lights disappear behind us. When we get home, instead of continuing to the airport, Dad says it's too risky now, too many people watching. He's furious and blaming Mom for playing that voicemail on speaker, for tipping off whoever's trying to stop us. As punishment, he makes us get out of the van and drags our mattresses out of the bedroom, pulling them down the hall and into the garage. He says we have to sleep sitting up against the wall, so we'll be too tired to cause problems before the rescheduled flight. We spend the night propped against the bedroom wall, still chained together, unable to lie down or get comfortable. My back aches within an hour, and my wrists throb where the metal digs in. Micah cries silently next to me, tears running down his face, but he's too exhausted to make sound. Every time I start to drift off, my head drops forward and jerks me awake. The room is dark except for the streetlight coming through the barred windows, and I can hear my brothers breathing in different rhythms, none of us really sleeping. In the dark, Noah whispers that this is all my fault for getting authorities involved, that we could have just accepted the surgery and stayed together, and everything would be fine. His voice is angry and bitter, and I feel Micah's hand squeeze mine in response, a silent thank you for trying. Judah says nothing at all, but his breathing sounds wrong, like he's trying not to scream or cry or both. We're fracturing even while we're literally tied together, each of us dealing with this in completely different ways. Noah wants to submit and make it easier. Micah wants to be saved. Judah wants to disappear, and I want to fight. The divisions between us feel wider than they ever did before the chains, before the sewn shirts, before any of this started. I sit there in the dark thinking about how my parents wanted to make us closer, but they're actually tearing us apart from the inside. Early the next morning, while we're still sitting against the wall, exhausted and aching, I don't know that Porter's lawyer is in an emergency hearing downtown. A judge is looking at the photos from the ER and the scanned consent forms with forged signatures and the evidence of our attempted flight last night. The judge signs a temporary order blocking our family from any international travel, pending a full investigation into abuse and child endangerment. The order has to be physically served to my parents, though, which means someone has to find us and hand them the official papers. I'm sitting there with my brothers, my back screaming and my wrists raw, and I have no idea that help is actually coming this time. Around 9 in the morning, I hear a car door slam outside, and Dad jerks awake from where he was dozing in the hallway chair. He moves to the window, and his whole body goes stiff when he sees Ayana walking up our driveway with papers in her hand. He doesn't answer when she knocks, just stands there frozen until she knocks again, and then he's moving fast, unlocking our bedroom door and yanking us to our feet. My legs almost give out after sitting all night, and Micah stumbles into me as Dad drags us down the hall toward the garage. Mom appears from somewhere asking what's happening, and Dad just says they're here to serve papers, and we need to leave now. We pile into the van through the garage door, still in yesterday's clothes and smelling like sweat and fear, and Dad backs out while Ayana is still knocking at the front door. He takes side streets and back roads toward the airport, checking the mirrors every few seconds, and Mom keeps turning around to look behind us. The tension makes my chest tight, and I can feel my brothers pressed against me in the connected shirts, all of us breathing too fast. Traffic gets heavier as we get closer to the airport, and Dad's knuckles are white on the steering wheel. We pull up to the departure curb, and Dad starts unloading bags from the back, while Mom herds us toward the entrance. An airline employee at the curbside check-in counter looks at our tickets and passports, then looks at us more closely. Her eyes move over our ages, our wrinkled clothes, the way we're standing too close together, and something in her face changes. She makes a phone call while Dad is still pulling the last bag from the van, speaking quietly into her radio, and within minutes, a guy in an airport police uniform is walking toward us. Officer Curtis appears right behind him, holding papers in his hand, and my heart jumps so hard I feel dizzy. Curtis walks straight to Dad and asks him to step aside, his voice calm but firm, and the airport liaison stands between us and our parents. Curtis says we kids need to be interviewed separately, and Dad starts arguing about our flight time, how we're going to miss our plane, but the liaison cuts him off saying this is a legal order and nobody's boarding until it's handled. A female airport officer appears, and she and Curtis lead us toward a security office while our parents are taken to a different room. Micah's hand finds mine, even though we're not chained anymore, and I squeeze back as we walk down a hallway with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The private room has gray walls and a table with 4 chairs, and Curtis closes the door behind us. He asks if we're okay, and I nod, but my throat feels too tight to talk at first. The female officer, her name tag says Martinez, sits across from us and asks if anyone hurt us this morning. I shake my head, and then I just start rolling up my sleeves because words feel too hard. The chain marks are dark purple and red, some parts scabbed over and some still raw and weeping. Curtis leans forward to look closer, and Martinez takes out a camera to photograph them. I tell them everything in a voice that shakes so much I have to stop and breathe between sentences. The years of forced hand-holding starting when I was 7, the sewn clothes that choked us, the chains with padlocks, the surgery plan in the Philippines, the forged consent forms with our signatures copied. My voice cracks when I talk about the diagrams on our bedroom wall, showing how we'd be connected with skin grafts and shared blood vessels. Micah shows his wrists too and nods when Curtis asks if everything I'm saying is true. Even Noah, who's been defending our parents for months, quietly admits it's all real. Judah just sits there staring at the table, but he doesn't contradict anything. Curtis writes everything down, and Martinez keeps taking pictures, and I can see their faces getting harder as I talk. In the other room, our parents are being interviewed, and I find out later their story completely falls apart under questioning. Dad starts explaining their philosophy about family unity and how modern society destroys closeness through independence, going on about how siblings grow apart and families fracture. Mom cries about losing her own brothers and sisters after childhood, how they all moved away and stopped talking, how she couldn't let that happen to her sons. The officers' faces show they understand the pain is real, but it doesn't excuse what they did to us. By noon, Curtis comes back into our room and says, "Emergency protective custody has been granted. We're not boarding the flight, and our parents are being detained for child endangerment and reckless endangerment." Through the office window, I watch Dad and Mom being walked to separate police cars in handcuffs, and my chest feels like it's caving in, even though this is exactly what I fought for. The relief and guilt hit me at the same time, and I can't breathe right. I barely make it to the airport bathroom before I throw up, my body shaking so hard I can't stand up straight. Martinez follows me in and stands by the sinks while I'm sick, not touching me, but asking if I need water. For the first time in 8 years, nobody is touching me at all. No hands held, no chains pulling at my wrists, no sewn fabric connecting me to my brothers. The freedom feels like falling, and I grab the toilet seat to steady myself. I sit on the bathroom floor for 10 minutes trying to remember how to exist as just myself, as one person instead of a quarter of a unit. My wrists feel too light without the chains, and I keep touching them to make sure they're really bare. That afternoon, we're driven to a CPS office in a building that smells like coffee and old carpet. The fluorescent lights make everything look flat and tired. Ayana meets us there and takes us to a room with worn chairs and a table covered in scratches. She explains we'll be in foster care temporarily, while the investigation continues, her voice gentle but honest. She says we'll probably be split up because there aren't many homes that can take 4 kids at once, especially on such short notice. Micah grabs onto my shirt and won't let go, his fingers twisting in the fabric, and I feel like I'm failing him, even though I know this is better than surgery. Ayana makes phone calls while we sit there, and slowly arrangements get made. By evening, I'm in a car heading to a house on the other side of town. The Foster family is named the Hamptons, and their house smells like laundry detergent and something baking. Mrs. Hampton shows me to a room with just one bed, one desk, one dresser. My brothers are going to different homes, and the silence of being alone is so loud it makes my ears ring. I sit on the bed, and the space around me feels wrong. Too much room, too much quiet. Everything feels wrong, but I know it's the right kind of wrong. The lack of weight on my wrists, the absence of someone breathing next to me, the ability to move without pulling anyone else along. I lie down and spread my arms wide just because I can, and my chest gets tight again. 2 days later, There's an emergency court hearing in a building with marble floors and wooden benches. A lawyer Ayana brought explains the process to me in the hallway before we go in. A judge issues a formal no-contact order except for supervised visits. The lawyer says this could take months to fully resolve, with evaluations and hearings and possible criminal charges against our parents. I sit in the courthouse hallway afterward with my brothers for a few supervised minutes, and we don't know what to say to each other. We're not touching, and the space between us feels huge. I realize I'm not waiting for rescue anymore. I'm in the middle of being rescued, and it's messier and slower and more complicated than I imagined. At the foster home, Mrs. Hampton shows me where things are and explains the rules about chores and bedtime. I mess up constantly because I keep asking permission for everything. I stand at the bathroom door waiting for someone to tell me I can go in, and she finds me there looking confused. She says I can use the bathroom whenever I need to without asking, and I nod, but it feels wrong to just walk in alone. That first night I panic when she closes my bedroom door, and I sit on the bed with my chest getting tight and my hands shaking. She comes back when she hears me breathing too fast and shows me the nightlight in the wall socket. She asks if I want the door left open, and I say yes in a voice that sounds too small. The house is quiet, in a way that makes my ears ring, and I lie in bed, moving my arms and legs just to feel the space around me. Nobody pulls on me or shifts in their sleep next to me, and the freedom makes me feel like I'm floating away. The next afternoon, Porter shows up at the foster home with a folder of my old homework and some papers about school. He sits at the kitchen table with me and Mrs. Hampton, and he explains I can start back part-time if full days feel like too much. We make a plan for me to try 2 classes first, maybe English and math, and see how that goes. He promises to check in every week and asks if I have questions about anything. I ask if people at the school know what happened, and he says some kids have probably heard things, but the school isn't allowed to discuss my situation. Having small steps instead of jumping back into everything makes the future feel less impossible. He leaves his cell number written on a sticky note and tells me to call if I need anything, and I put it in my pocket, even though I probably won't use it. The following week, Ayana drives me to a therapy appointment in a building with a waiting room that smells like coffee and old magazines. The therapist is a quiet woman named Dr. Leroy, who has gray hair and glasses and doesn't smile too much or too little. She asks about my panic attacks and how I've been sleeping, and I stumble through trying to explain how it feels when people get too close now. I tell her I freeze up if someone touches me without warning, and my skin feels wrong, like it's too tight or something. She nods, like this makes perfect sense, and doesn't act like I'm broken or weird. She doesn't promise to fix me or make everything better, just says we'll work on coping skills for when the panic hits. The session is only 40 minutes, but it feels longer, and when I leave, I'm tired in a way that has nothing to do with my body. On Saturday, there's a supervised visit with my brothers at a CPS office with a social worker sitting in the corner watching us. Micah runs to me crying the second I walk in, and he grabs onto my shirt with both hands. Noah looks angry and won't sit down, pacing by the window and saying, "Foster care is worse than home, because at least at home we were together." Judah sits in a corner chair and won't talk to anyone, just stares at the floor with his arms crossed. The social worker tries to get us talking about how we're adjusting, but nobody wants to share anything real with a stranger watching. We're all dealing with this differently, and the space between us feels wider than when we were chained together. Micah asks when we can go home, and I don't know how to explain that home isn't safe and maybe never was. The visit lasts an hour and leaves me feeling empty and guilty, like I broke something that can't be fixed. 2 weeks after the airport, Ayana calls and asks to meet at a coffee shop near the foster home. She buys me hot chocolate and tells me, "Doctor." Santos replied to the investigation through his lawyer. He claims he thought our parents had proper consent and psychiatric evaluations for all of us, and now he's trying to distance himself from the whole plan. The Philippines Medical Board is investigating him, but Ayana says he'll probably just lose his license there and move his practice somewhere else. Justice feels incomplete and frustrating, like catching only part of the people responsible. I ask if he'll face charges here, and she says probably not because he never actually did the surgery and he's in another country. The hot chocolate tastes good, but I can't finish it because my stomach feels tight and wrong. I go back to the school part-time the following Monday, and everyone stares at me in the hallways. Some kids have seen the old photos of us chained together that got passed around before we were withdrawn from the school. Nobody asks me questions directly, and I don't offer explanations or try to make friends. I focus on getting through English and math, taking notes and doing the work without talking to anyone. At lunch, I eat in the library where it's quiet, and the librarian doesn't ask why I'm there alone. Going back to the foster home after just 2 classes feels like a relief, and Mrs. Hampton has snacks ready and doesn't push me to talk about how it went. I do my homework at the kitchen table and she cooks dinner, and the normal routine feels strange but good. 3 weeks in, I wake up screaming from a nightmare about being sewn back together. In the dream, Mom is stitching my skin to Noah's, while Dad holds us down, and I can feel the needle going through. Mrs. Hampton comes in and sits in the doorway without touching me, talking in a low voice until my breathing slows down. She teaches me something called the 5-4-3-2-1 technique, where you name things you can see and hear and feel. I use it right there in bed, naming the nightlight and the window and the blanket, and it actually helps. I use the technique 4 more times that week when panic hits during random moments, like in the shower or doing homework. Progress isn't a straight line, and some nights are worse than others, even when I think I'm getting better. At the 1-month mark, there's a case update meeting at the CPS office with Ayana and a lawyer and some other people I don't know. They explain my parents have been ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluations, and the district attorney is considering charges for child abuse and false imprisonment. The process will take at least 6 more months, maybe longer, because these cases move slowly through the system. I'm learning to live with uncertainty instead of waiting for everything to be resolved and finished. The lawyer asks if I'm willing to testify if it goes to trial, and I say yes, even though the thought makes me want to throw up. Ayana says my brothers are adjusting at different speeds and will keep doing supervised visits every week. One evening I'm doing dishes at the foster home, and I realize I'm moving freely from sink to counter to table without thinking about it. My hands work independently, reaching for plates and cups and putting them away without coordinating with 3 other people. I can turn my whole body to grab the dish towel without checking if someone else is turning too. The relief is small and physical, like a muscle unclenching after years of being tight. Mrs. Hampton is reading at the table and doesn't comment on it, but I catch her watching me with a small smile. I finish the dishes and wipe down the counter, and the simple task feels almost normal. I start writing everything down in a notebook Dr. Leroy gave me. Not for therapy exactly, but to practice putting the experience into words for eventual testimony. I write about the first time Mom made us hold hands, about the sewn shirts and the chains and the surgery diagrams. The writing helps me see the story as something that happened, rather than something that's still happening to me right now. My voice on the page is steadier than my voice out loud, and I can get through details without my chest getting tight. Dr. Leroy says writing can be a way to process trauma, and it gives me something to do when the nights feel too quiet and long. I keep a printed copy of the court order in my nightstand drawer next to the lamp. Some nights when I can't sleep, I take it out and unfold it carefully, running my fingers over the official stamp at the bottom. The part that says no contact and protective custody is highlighted in yellow from when Ayana showed me which sections meant I was safe. It's become this weird thing I do, like how Mom used to touch her key necklace, except this paper means I actually have rights that someone will make real. I read the judge's signature at the bottom, and it makes my chest feel less tight, knowing an adult with power said my parents can't get to us anymore. By the end of the 2nd month, I'm going to the school full-time instead of just 2 classes. My routine is pretty basic, but it helps me not think too far ahead. Therapy happens on Tuesdays after school, where Dr. Leroy teaches me breathing stuff, and we talk about the panic attacks. Saturdays are supervised visits with my brothers at the CPS office, which are still hard because Micah cries and Noah stays mad at me. The rest of the week I do homework at the foster home's kitchen table, while Mrs. Hampton cooks dinner or reads her book. There are still depositions coming up where I'll have to answer questions about everything and more hearings after that to figure out what happens long term. I don't know if my brothers will come back to live with me or if we'll stay in different homes, but I'm learning to take things 1 week at a time instead of trying to see the whole future at once, which just makes me feel like I'm drowning. Tonight I'm lying in my own bed in my own room with the door cracked open so the hall light comes in. I hold my hands up in the dark just to feel them separate and free, wiggling my fingers independently without anyone else's hand pulling at mine. The surgery isn't happening. That threat is completely gone, but I still get this weird ache for touch sometimes that doesn't make sense. After years of being forced to connect, the loneliness feels wrong even though I fought so hard for this space. My hands are finally mine to control, and I'm slowly learning what to do with them now that they don't belong to my whole family anymore. So yeah, that's pretty much the story. Nothing dramatic, just how it happened. Thanks for sticking around. It's always nice having someone to talk to through these. Come back next time if you feel like it.